capture. A long campaign is now...
This is the current market in Mogadishu.
NATO's military success against
many Western nations.
This is On Assignment.
Welcome, everybody, to another edition of On Assignment, your source for the stories behind the stories. I'm Philip Alexia.
And I'm Alex Villarreal. Coming up, AIDS and the virus that causes it still kill more than 1 million people each year. A new VOA documentary looks at the disease and the stigma it carries.
Then it's Washington's YALI conference, where young African leaders talk about the future of the continent.
And fighting bugs with bugs, how scientists are dealing with a tree-killing beetle.
The lights are on and the cameras are rolling. We're going on assignment. Since it emerged in 1981, HIV/AIDS-related illness has killed tens of millions of people. The virus known as HIV is often transmitted through sex or needles and still carries with it a heavy stigma. This can lead some to delay testing or hide a diagnosis, putting themselves and others at even more risk.
A new VOA documentary explores this stigma and its effect on the 35 million people currently living with HIV. VOA's Jeff Swycord was the lead producer of the project called AIDS Living in the Shadows, and he talked with On Assignment's Lisa Vora. You will likely recognize the documentary's host, a world-famous music superstar.
To millions, being HIV positive means living in the shadows. I'm Elton John, and I'm an AIDS activist. Stigma forces people underground and stands in the way of ending the AIDS crisis.
These are really people stories. They're about what people go through who are HIV and the stigma they face.
And I looked at those pills and I remember thinking this is going to be the death of me.
I strive to survive just for him.
In Haiti, 2 children are born with HIV every day. 20-year-old Venice Luis's parents died from AIDS when she was 11. Orphaned, she went to live with an aunt. Several years later, she suspected something might be wrong with her.
I was getting sick often, and they took me to get an HIV test when I was 14. And that is when they found out I am positive. And my aunt's boyfriend said that I cannot stay in the house because I would infect the other children.
Bernice was an interesting case because she, I couldn't figure out if she really wanted us to film her at first. It was a little difficult and a little hard, and at times she was kind of shy and didn't like that I was following her around with a camera all the time. So it was a little strange, but then she started to, I think, maybe gain some trust with us, which is always important when you're working with a character.
Venice received sporadic treatment at a hospital. She also met with a psychologist about the abuse she was suffering.
They told me that if I did not do what they say, they will kick me out of the house. And I will be in the street like a prostitute sleeping with men, and they will not accept me back.
I noticed, just from a producer standpoint, you just kind of kept the camera on her for a while so that the audience can absorb that moment. What were your thoughts at that time?
Generally, when you get a reaction like that, and you see it's an emotional reaction, you don't want to say anything, you don't want to do anything. But of course, my translator started to talk to translate, and I just grabbed him real quick to say, stop, be quiet. And I let Vernice go through the moment that she was going through, and we just kept the camera rolling. And it shows the emotion and the drama that she went through.
The children at the orphanage.
Yeah.
They're HIV positive. You spent some time with them.
Yeah.
Tell me about what that was like.
In one way, happy and fun because they're really great kids, and you can kind of tell they're kind of starved for attention. Some of them, because I don't think people come around too much to the orphanage to talk with them. But it was great working with them, and You know, there was one point I was on the floor shooting them while they were studying, and you know, the kids would just like come climb on your back, and they were fascinated with the camera and the eyepiece and everything. And it was almost hard to shoot. And I almost had to tell them, you know, get off my back, I got to work. But I was like, no, just leave them there. It was really sweet. Yeah.
You focus on all these different countries and different ways that they're trying to control the spread of HIV. So you have Vancouver, where they have drug clinics where people can actually go there, and that way they are not infected. Meanwhile, you have Uganda and Nigeria are banning homosexuality completely because they believe that that's how HIV is spreading. So I just want to know your thoughts as you're putting this together on the disparity between these countries.
There's a culture war. There's a real culture war between the West and places in Africa where there have been a lot of influence of American evangelicals. And in some ways, American evangelicals have kind of given up on the U.S. and say, okay, our way of life and our way of thinking about things and our biblical traditions haven't really taken root here, but in places like Africa and Uganda and Nigeria, which are very conservative societies, they get some play, and people take to heart what they're saying.
Afani Arazaliki runs a clinic providing healthcare services for gay men in Abuja, Nigeria. 17% of gay men in Nigeria are HIV positive.
We can't keep quiet for people to die or for people to lose their life. The law, on the other hand, we are battling the law because even people like us stand to go for 10 years imprisonment for doing what we're doing.
He sees those laws as something that is fueling the AIDS virus in the country because it's pressing gay men and transsexuals underground in the country where they can't seek health services and information to protect themselves from HIV.
So we have a lot more work to do where it becomes a disease that's living with cancer or diabetes or any other chronic illness, because so many people are affected.
Life wasn't meant to be good for me.
I was looked down on.
Putting this whole thing together, what are your thoughts, your journey as a documentary filmmaker?
I was just really happy with the characters that we had in the stories. I thought they were all very strong characters and definitely had something to say. I think it's an incredibly important issue. I think that the AIDS crisis will not end unless stigma is ended. People have to feel free to get health services and information to protect themselves, or it's not going to end.
I believe I can live a long life. I wasn't supposed to be here now.
Wow, some very powerful work there from both Jeff and Lisa. Thanks to them. And a special thank you, of course, to Sir Elton John for helping VOA get out these stories.
Yeah, and Alex, the young man coming out of the piece where he said that, he wasn't supposed to be here now. I mean, very powerful, and it's an indication really as to how far medication has come for this disease.
Yeah, it's really amazing to see the path of treatment, and hopefully it will continue getting better. Yeah. Well, if you would like to view the full half-hour documentary, AIDS Living in the Shadows, you can find it on our website, voanews.com.
Well, time for another break, but when we come back, Africa's next generation of leaders gather in Washington. You're watching On Assignment. They gathered in Washington for a summit that included a meeting with U.S. President Barack Obama, the highlight of a fellowship that gives some 500 young Africans a chance to develop academically and professionally. It's called the Young African Leaders Initiative, or YALI. President Obama launched YALI in 2010 and says the stability of the world depends on Africa. And joining me now is VOA Africa 54 TV host Vincent McCory. And Vincent, tell us a little bit more about what YALI is.
Well, YALI is a program that was started by the President of the United States to empower the future generation of African leaders. It draws from young people in all fields and professions who are dynamic, but also kind of have a focus on something they're doing. And so they kind of are being helped to not only nurture those abilities, but also to equip them, not only for what they're doing today, but for what they can do in the future. So it's kind of a program that looks at Africa from a point of tomorrow and make Africa better tomorrow through its younger leaders of today.
So how do you get selected? Because as I understand it, some 50,000 applicants tried to get in on this program, and only 500 made it.
It's a very tough process. What they do is they kind of select people here in Washington and across the world who kind of look at the applications of these young fellows. And groups of people are given a number of applications, and there are certain criteria that they look at. They have to kind of impress them in terms of the ideas they have and what they want to do with this program. And they go through that process and kind of sieve through all this, these thousands upon thousands of applications and get the best out of them. Not to mean that the others are not as good, but at least they need to cut it down to a certain manageable number so they can bring in 5,000, at least until this year.
And now you profiled a good number of them, and I believe one of them was J.J. Sigbethia, if I'm saying that right. Is that
yes,
correct? And
J.J.
he's from Ghana,
Sigbethia
right?
From Ghana.
And he was really excited about this program.
He's fired, and I think it captures the spirit of the kind of leadership Africa is looking for.
I had this impression that business education was going to be the classroom type, but here you get to do it. You understand? So sometimes it leaves you with an itch to quickly go back to your country and just apply it as quickly before it all runs out your mind. Yeah. Meeting people from different countries, even from the continent of Africa, is as culturally engaging as meeting non-Africans in Dartmouth or New Hampshire or Washington. And that's because you discover that although we are all from the same continent, everybody has different ways of doing things.
Now, they saw the president. They had a chance to visit with him. And what do you think that meant for them to see the president of the United States?
It was great. I mean, the president comes out there in a very informal way, having a conversation with them. I think one of the things they get out of this is the contrast between how they relate with their leaders in Africa and how President Obama is relating with them. It is a great privilege to be standing before the president of the free world, the leader of the free world, and have him interact with you in a very informal way, literally talking and having a conversation with you. I think it left a great impression upon their minds, and it helps them actually to really develop that confidence.
And what do you think really struck you the most when they came here to the U.S.?
Yeah, listening to many of them, talking to a bunch of them, I think what strikes me is that first, they're not so intimidated by the West or the U.S. They have grown up at a time in life where technology has kind of united them globally. They feel they're on the same level and footing with anybody anywhere in the world. But they do appreciate greatly the advancement in the United States and also the kind of exposure they are able to get by just being in the United States, going to the different places that they were placed, and learning from the best practices right here in the United States. But another thing that struck me about their demeanor, their disposition, is that they really have a focus on developing their countries back home. They're here to learn and transfer these skills, this expertise, these experiences back home and move the continent forward. That was amazing when you listen to them and kind of hear what they have to say.
And this is a program that will continue on, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. The president has said it's going to double the number of those coming. I think it's going to be, by 2016, about 1,000 will be coming. There's more funding that is being set aside for this, so the program will go on.
All right. Vincent McCory, everybody, from Africa 54 TV. Thanks a lot for coming in, telling us all about it.
All right, it was a delight to me.
All right, thanks. All right, time for a break, but on the other side, killing bugs and saving trees. You're watching On Assignment. Pest control is a problem for agriculture around the world. Invasive insects cause billions of dollars worth of damage each year in the United States alone. In Maryland, an invasive beetle, the emerald ash borer, is destroying trees, and scientists are pitting bugs against bugs to try to save the forest.
They are. Instead of pesticides that risk doing additional harm, the beetle's natural predator, a type of wasp, is being put to work against these invaders. VOA science reporter Steve Baragona tells me all about this small-scale circle of life. So, Steve, what exactly are these wasps being brought to Maryland to do?
Well, there's a beetle out there that's ruining the forests. It's doing a heck of a lot of damage. The beetles themselves basically destroy the trees. They kill the trees. And the wasps are being brought in to kill the beetles. This is like their natural food. This is where they, well, not even food, actually. They lay their eggs in these creatures.
The young insects carve these twisting galleries under the bark, cutting off the flow of nutrients and killing tens of millions of ash trees. Experts say these Asian invaders probably arrived in a shipment from China. They are expected to cost an estimated $10 billion in damage through the end of this decade, not to mention the ecological impact.
Well, this is the way it works in the wild. These wasps and the larvae of the emerald ash borer they've developed this relationship over millions of years. It helps to keep the population in control, the population of the emerald ash borer in control, because these wasps, as I said, they lay their eggs inside the larvae, kills the larvae, and it helps to kind of further the wasp species and keep down the emerald ash borer species. And the idea here is that we've got this population of emerald ash borers that are out of control in this country. They're totally out of control. I mean, they're killing tens of millions of trees. And the reason it's totally out of control is it had no enemies when it arrived in this country. And so you bring in the natural enemies and you try to reestablish some kind of balance that's been lost.
Let's talk about where this beetle came from. How did this problem start?
Global trade has expanded tremendously over the last, several decades. And we get a lot of stuff from China. And because we get a lot of stuff from China, we get a lot of stuff we didn't ask for from China. And that includes emerald ash borers. That's where these came from. It includes the brown marmorated stink bug, which is a popular pest here.
Good.
No. I mean, there are a lot of invasive species that have come to us from China because we're exchanging so much with China.
You got a chance to go there and actually see these bugs in action, and you got to see the process of bringing in these wasps now to try to solve this problem. What was that like?
It was pretty cool. It was hot, but we were out in the middle of the forest. I mean, you might be able to hear it in some of the video. You're out there, you feel a little bit like Indiana Jones. And there, the biggest issue were ticks and poison ivy. And these guys out there, they've got their own kind of ways to cope with these things. They all have these little wet wipes type things that will fight the poison ivy if you get it on you, because it's everywhere.
Were you wearing any sort of protective gear?
They gave us boots.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, and that's good. And I was, wearing long pants. Even though it's hot out there, you got to stay away from the ticks.
Yeah, you don't want that.
Yeah, no, don't want that. But it was, it was beautiful out there. I mean, it was one of these days that had just rained the day before, and so the forest was like this electric green color, And you walk in and it looks really healthy, it looks really vibrant.
Right. Now, Steve, a lot of people see stories about bugs and they're kind of like, not really, I don't know how I feel about that. So what would you say to those viewers? Why is this important?
Oh, well, first of all, I love bugs. I think they're fascinating. But to me, this is important because these invasive species are everywhere. We have a globalized world. I mean, because we trade around the world, we fly around the world, it's become one big ecosystem, basically. And in the process of creating this one big ecosystem, we've created lots of problems. And there are ways that we can solve these things. So the idea that you can use natural processes to control some of the problems that we've created, I think is really appealing.
All right, and again, that was VOA's Steve Baragona with that very interesting story. But Phil, it is a bit of a risk here bringing in another bug to fight a problem bug, right? But Steve says the researchers do realize this, and they realize that this new bug could come in and become an invasive species itself, so they do have precautions that they're taking to avoid that.
Okay, well, let's just hope their precautions are good enough.
Yes.
I don't like bugs, as you know. All right, on to our next story, which will take us to Brooklyn, New York, where one middle school is proving victorious on a battleground of a different kind, the chessboard.
Intermediate school number 318 has won 32 chess titles, even beating high schools to win national championships. VOA's Bernard Schussman visited the school to see its young champions at play.
Chess is a way of life at Brooklyn Intermediate School 318. The game provides an important message for the youngsters, says chess program coordinator and assistant principal John Galvin.
So most of our kids come from disadvantaged backgrounds, which means that no one's really given them a leg up in life. So we think our program really teaches kids that they can be great at something. So when our kids from Williamsburg, Brooklyn go around and beat all the best private schools in the country, beat the best high schools in the country, we think that sends a powerful message.
80 students are on the chess team during the school year, while summer chess is open to 40 kids. They learn a lot of skills playing chess: advanced planning, decision-making, and consequences.
In reading, you have to imagine the story or what's going on. But in chess, you also have to see what is your opponent's doing and what are they threatening.
I like chess because it's a strategy game, and I just like studying it. I like studying the game.
I think it helps with a lot of things. It helps with math, helps with reading, it helps with writing, and it's also a fun game.
The program at IS 318 has become known worldwide. Norwegian chess grandmaster Magnus Carlsen, who's #1 in the world, visited the school in 2012 to congratulate the newly crowned national champions. And an award-winning feature film, Brooklyn Castle, highlighted the team's successes. The school has won hundreds of trophies, but Principal Eric Windley says the key thing chess offers is opportunity for every student.
Anybody can play chess, whether you're shy, whether you're outgoing, whether you have a lot of friends, you don't have a lot of friends. Chess is a game that anybody can play. And once they play it, they like it.
Hobo F. Koro, a graduate of IS 318's chess program and now on his way to college on a scholarship, coaches these summer students.
Life is a game of chess. You know, you have to be able to make the right moves. You have to be able to, when you're confronted with a situation, you have to be able to sit back, analyze the situation before you before you make a decision and proceed with that decision. So, you know, given that, I'll always be able to take that away from the game, and I'll always be able to use that in my everyday life as I go on.
98% of the IS 318 chess students graduate from high school, and most go on to college. Bernard Schussman, VOA News, Brooklyn, New York.
And that does it for us this weekend. Before we go, though, we want to give a shout out to viewers watching us on Kula TV in Pannonia, Serbia, and also on Sky TV in Monrovia, Liberia.
Well, don't forget to visit us on Facebook.com/VOA on assignment and tell us what you'd like us to ask our VOA reporters here on the show.
And also, what are your ideas? Let us know what the most important issues are in your part of the world, because we'd love to hear from you guys and what you're thinking.
We absolutely would. And of course, you can always find our episodes on the Programs tab of our global news website, voanews.com. Thanks so much for watching. On behalf of all of us here at On Assignment, goodbye from Washington.